In the past 5 years, I've gone from living paycheck to paycheck to always having a considerable sum of money saved in the event that anything happens. Since then, I've gone from making what I considered a great salary to taking an intentional 50% pay cut so that I can free up my time. So first, I want to share why I think people who live paycheck to paycheck, whether that's at $100,000 a year or at $20,000 a year, struggle so much, and then we'll get into the advice. The myth of more money. It would be disingenuous for me not to talk about the biggest financial struggle most people are facing today. Costs are rising and salaries are not rising to meet those costs. Spending $100 at the grocery store today feels the same as $20 just a couple years ago, and people are paying the same price as high-rise apartments in the past for a shoebox right now. And I guarantee you this struggle is everywhere. In Japan, where I live right now, the yen has been declining since literally the month I got here. They've shrunk the food sizes and increased the prices, and things like traveling or having a vehicle now feel like luxury experiences, where just a couple years ago, these were all relatively affordable choices. These struggles are all true, and at the same time, they reinforce the biggest financial myth that we've all bought into. That if we can just earn more money, we'll be able to dig ourselves out of any hole. But if just earning more money was the answer, there'd be no reason for more than half of the people making $100K a year to be living paycheck to paycheck. And I understand that different areas have different prices, but guaranteed there are people making less than that and living in those same areas. And at the same time, if you're a person that's spending everything you make just on basic survival, it can be really disheartening to know that you share the same struggle as someone making up to 10 times your current salary. After all, the idea is that if you had more money, you'd be able to save more, which would then take you out of your circumstance. But here's why earning more isn't the answer. Because if you increase your income to match whatever lifestyle you want, you're bringing your income up just to break even. Then you need to make more than that in order to have any breathing space. And this is the paycheck to paycheck trap, or the middle class trap, whichever version of this trap you're experiencing right now. The idea that because you can pay for something means that you can afford it goes with you, and your expenses increase to match whatever income you make. Then it just takes one emergency and you're knocked back down into the same cycle you were in before, just higher costing and higher stakes. The answer is to learn to live below your means. And I say learn because we were never taught. We learned the opposite, which is debt is normal, and downsizing your lifestyle in any way is a sign that you're a failure. Imagine trading in whatever vehicle you have now to pull up in a 15-year-old Beta car to your high school. While everyone else is in nicer cars, you'd feel like a failure, even if unknowingly to you, they're up to their neck in debt. Or if you're making much less and decide to move back home with your parents in your 20s or 30s, you'd call yourself a loser for looking out for your own financial health. And you can see why we reinforce the myth of just earning more. It's just a bad relationship we've developed with keeping money that causes us to ignore keeping more as a solution. So we just focus on getting more. But without learning to keep more money, we'll never escape the trap. And this leads to the first and maybe most controversial piece of advice I have: thinking the economy is the problem. If we went back to the first ever financial exchange, I'm positive the guy spending the money said the economy is the problem. Rocks are getting harder to come by. The economy is always a problem for people who have a bad relationship with money. And I'm not saying that to be judgmental, I'm saying that they are affected disproportionately. This is going to be a crazy oversimplification of the economy, but just go with me. If the economy has two levels of contribution, some people are the engines and some people are the fuel. Engines understand that money is a useful tool to generate more opportunity and money by saving, investing, and starting businesses that employ others directly or indirectly. They create and give value to the economy and receive financial reward in the form of returns on their investments in their business or portfolio. They aren't immune to a bad economy, but because they've taken the time to learn the skills of money management, investing, and the language of money and how to grow it, they have more choices whether the economy is good or bad. The next level is the fuel. They live almost exactly at their means. They use money to maximize the moment rather than with deep thought or a plan for the future. So these people take loans for cars that's a quarter of their take-home salary because they think they can afford to pay a quarter of their take-home salary. They buy as nice of homes as a bank would give them a mortgage for and end up with the highest possible mortgage payments they can afford. And they justify eating out regularly with statements about how hard they work and what they deserve. Generating and creating opportunities for their money to make more money isn't really at the top of the list of their concerns because those rewards can't be experienced in the moment. Spending money like the fuel and maximizing moments is keeping you stuck. If people can thrive in the worst economies that we've ever seen, and people can also be poor in the wealthiest economies that we've ever seen, there is obviously an information gap between the haves and the have-nots, and closing that gap as quickly as possible is the only reasonable course of action for anyone that's financially conscious. And thankfully, a lot of the haves has put this information into books to make it accessible for everyone. Getting comfortable with debt. When I got my first credit card, I became comfortable with debt. I'd use it freely and allow the minimum payments to be withdrawn from my account every month, and I wouldn't pay attention to it because I assumed it was just being paid off. But I was about to move countries and they asked me to pay it all off at once. And I was shocked because somehow after 2 years of consecutively paying, I still owed more than I used. I can fully admit that I'm not the brightest bulb, but even as a dim bulb, I know 3 minus 1 equals 2. But somehow they found a way for 3 minus 1 to be 4. Even though I wasn't happy about it, I consider it a lucky experience to have been forced to pay it all off at once. Because if I didn't have to do that, I would have gotten more comfortable with debt and dug myself much deeper into a hole. Think of how much more breathing room you could have if you didn't have any payments. How you could start that business you always wanted, or really save for a trip that you'd love to make. The cost of being comfortable with debt, especially bad debt, is the experiences you could create for yourself. These companies that are incentivizing us to borrow their money with free flights, reward points, and discounts are not just being altruistic for if someone needs a hand, and it's not just more convenient for everyone to use. The debt we suffer from was marketed to us and worked so well that it normalized in society. If you were building a house and every time you brought in bricks, I came and took a third of it, you'd probably use one of those bricks to stop me the next time because you'd know I'm robbing you of building your house. It's literally the greatest hustle I've ever seen. These people are taking a cut of everyone's paychecks every month, and we all just consider it normal. And if you're a person that's just getting by, after everyone else takes their cut, you're left to build a house with what remains. And that's the true cost of debt. The idea that someone else will always be taking a portion of your paycheck and never considering a life without that. Working hard will get you paid more. This one is insidious because it's both true and untrue at the same time. It's why self-help gurus force this down our throats.
How much more successful do you want me to be?
More successful.
How many records can my records break?
More records.
But I'm the best.
But are you a different animal and the same beast?
So we feel somehow burnt out and like we're not doing enough at the same time. If the full extent of your day is exploring anime and mobile games with no interest in fixing your financial situation, working hard will absolutely get you paid more. So would picking up a second job if things are really tight. But the reason this is a bad idea if you're living paycheck to paycheck is because it doesn't solve our relationship to money. It's this simple equation of effort in equals money out. And that's only true if you've never taken the time to become financially literate. The answer to getting paid more and thereby being able to save and invest more is leverage. And to keep things simple, leverage is getting more out of every bit of effort you put in. There are 4 types of leverage today according to Naval Ravikant: content, code, capital, and labor. For each of these, every bit of effort you put in, the reward gets multiplied. And if you're still unsure, answer this question. Who do you think is working harder? The person cleaning the entire 12-story building room by room, or the business owner that's sending them out there to do that while they take the phone appointments? I'm not saying to start a business, but I am saying that leverage is what gets you paid. Investing is another type of leverage. It's using your capital to work for you until it eventually surpasses your monthly income and you didn't have to work 2 jobs to do that. Changing this formula that we have in our mind of time in equals money out can start to show us opportunities to increase our leverage and earnings so we can work our way out of this paycheck to paycheck routine. It'll work out someday. There is this idea at the back of everyone that's not doing too well financially's mind that some magical day in the future things will just sort itself out and we won't have to worry about financial stresses going forward. This is the same as burying your head in the sand and hoping when you pop out that everything is free. If we look at the trajectory of the average human's life, things just continue to get more expensive. After our teenage years, we start to provide for ourselves. Then we start to provide for our families. Then we have to put enough money to live for 30 years away without working. And then use of that same money to pay our medical bills, all while inflation keeps happening. It's a harsh truth, but financially, things never get easier. And the cost of keeping our heads in the sand is financial insecurity for a lifetime. And I get that it can be overwhelming when we first start reading finance books because it seems like a different language and reminds us of all of our shortcomings. But imagine for a second you moved to a different country where you didn't speak the language. You can't navigate life and people can't offer you help until you can understand what's being said. And it's the same with finance. Personally, I love finance podcasts and it's a great place to start since podcasts are more entertainment than books. But spend a couple of weeks reading a finance book and soon enough you'll see how simple and repetitive the information is, because it really is a few simple practices done over a long period of time that brings security. Good price means good value. Another way people stay stuck paycheck to paycheck is the way they perceive value. Broke people perceive value as price, whereas wealthy people perceive value based on what they get and how long they get it for, aka their return on investment. I'm gonna use a vehicle to break this down because everyone understands it, but know that this applies to everything from shampoo to dog food. People who live paycheck to paycheck are usually opportunity spenders. When buying a car, they would generally consider getting something reasonably priced new with only a couple of added features so they don't have to worry about it ever shutting down. But when looking at the price and what they get for the price, they're not paying attention to their return on the investment into the car. Here's what they do get. A reliable vehicle that can go from A to B without the fear of shutting down for a long period of time. What they get as a financial return on their investment is years of monthly payments on a depreciating asset and a weaker financial safety net in the event of a disaster. That's why almost every millionaire podcaster recommends getting started with a beater car, because it's the ultimate value for your money to get from A to B, because the return on an upfront cash purchase of a reliable used vehicle is months of income saved and opportunities created for you to invest and spend money on things that can help propel your financial future and still get the benefits of going from A to B. And if you enjoyed this video, I recommend you check this one out where I talk about how I stopped wanting to buy stuff. Check out my newsletter link below and hit like for your boy. Thank you for watching.